Hi, in this episode of Toysbackzen, this is my second video on making 3 3/4 O-ring Eagle Force figures. Now most of the figures I'm using right now is G.I. Joe figures and core figures, and I'm going to continue doing that. I got 3 Eagle Force figures here. And in this video we're going to be making Sergeant Brown. He is the communications expert. The other good guy we're going to be making is the Cat. He is the escape artist, and we're going to do a guy from the enemy side. This is a shock trooper, and he is a soldier of tyranny. So he's a silver color instead of the gold. So I do have some silver paint. We'll take a look at this in a bit. But he does have some red on him. So we've got some red accents we have to paint. And on this guy here, he's got a mustache. So for the figures, because we're doing 3 figures today, so the figures that we're going to use is this one here. I've got some spearhead arms. I think the head is a flint head, but he's going to be, of course, Sergeant Brown, so he's going to have a different skin tone. So we'll paint the skin tone. Now I've given him Shockwave's vest because the communications officer or expert here, he's got some kind of vest. He's got pouches on his vest, and this guy doesn't, but that's okay. It's the look I'm going for, and he's got a collar here, so I wanted the collar to stick out. So we'll paint that to make that look right. He's also using a core waist and legs, and the reason why I chose this leg, even though I think the knife here is a little too small, I chose it because he does have a knife on his right ankle, and he's got a gun holster here, which you can see the Eagle Force figure has that. So I think with a little bit of paint work we can make him look really good. Now we have the Shock Trooper here. G.I. Joe also had a character named the Shock Trooper, but this came way earlier than that Shock Trooper. He is in silver, so we do have some silver chrome spray paint, which I think will look really good. Now for the G.I. Joe that we're going to use, I have a probably 2005, 2006, maybe even later Duke. He's an O-ring figure. He's got the gun on the right side of his leg. He's got the strap going down, and he also has a grenade here, but I think that will look really good. Now, of course, his head isn't going to look right, so I have a bison head here, and I think that's going to look really good. Hopefully that head fits in here. If it doesn't, well, we'll have to make some modifications. It looks like it's a different construction, so we might have to make some modifications to make that head fit. But he's got the hat, and of course, this trooper, he's got sunglasses. So we're going to have to make some sunglasses for this head. Now for the cat here, I do have I think this is a 2007 Flint. Don't quote me on all these dates. I'm going by memory of when I think I bought these. And I'm going to be using his head, obviously. And I'm going to be using his legs. And I think I'm going to be using his I'll be using his waist, but for his arms and for his chest I have a firefly figured, and I think it'll look really good with what I want to do with him to make these figures. Now I'm gonna have to make a mustache for this guy, but other than that I think we can work with these figures. So I'm doing 3 this video because I do want to do, there's a lot of good guys and there's not as many enemies, so I wanted to incorporate an enemy, and I had all these parts that I figured I could make what I needed. So let's get all these guys taken apart, put together in groups, and we're going to paint them right away. Here we go. Now looking at the construction of these heads, you can clearly see they are different. I'm going to have to take Bison's neck there, and I'm going to have to use my Dremel, and we're going to shape that to make it look more like Duke's head, and hopefully that will fit in the body that I'm going to use. And here you can see we have another head that's got that ball joint, but of course this is from the 1984, I think 84 or 85 mold, and of course that doesn't fit either, so we're gonna have to make some changes to that. Unfortunately, I was hoping that that head would fit in there. So change of plans, I'm actually going to take this Zap green shirt figure here, and I'm going to use his head because it has the same kind of mold that I need with this body. And you can see that the paintwork on this isn't very good. These figures were not very good, and they weren't well made. And the plastic that they used for these, I've had several of these figures where they have broken just by articulating the elbows and stuff. You can see the plastic on the back of his elbow is broken, so he will be a good candidate to just use his head. Of course, we're going to have to do the same thing. We're going to have to take the top of his head off and put a beret on him. Luckily, he's got a mustache already. I've got this free head that I got from a toy show one time. It's going to need some work, but I can cut the beret off him and add it to this guy's head. And if you're curious to know what paint I'm using, here is that gold Rust-Oleum that I showed you in the first video. And I have this Duplicolor Chrome that I've had this for probably 3 or 4 years, and I've used it in a bunch of just things around the house, and I think that this will be appropriate for the Shock Trooper. Alright, so we're going to go outside and get these painted. So you can see here all the parts that I have painted. We've got Sergeant Brown here. He's got all his gold. Now I did tape up his head here because I do, even though I am going to be painting his face, I still wanted to have that taped off. So we've got that taped off. And we have Shock Trooper here. Everything is pretty much silver except for his boots. You can see that I didn't paint his boots all the way silver, and I'll be painting those black. There's a lot of black on all of these figures. Like I did with the first figures, is I gave them some accents to try to make them look a little different from each other because there's so much gold. So I'll be doing that with these guys too. We've got the gold here for the cat, and I haven't done either one of these guys' heads yet. I'm going to be painting this by hand. I'm just going to be painting the collar and then down here gold like the original figure, and the rest of it's going to be black, and I'm going to paint some details on the knife here. Let's reveal his head here and see if that tape job was better than the figure I did in the last video. That one had a little bit of paint bleed underneath the tape, so I taped this one a little bit better. Yeah, there's still a little bit more tape bleed there, but at least it didn't go on his forehead too much. So we can clean that up. I'm actually painting his face anyway, like I said. I got to paint it brown for the skin color, so we'll do that. So that's awesome. That worked out pretty good. I'm going to use this Vallejo black paint, and we're going to do all the black details on all 3 of these figures. So I'm going to get my paintbrush ready, and we're going to get started. Here we go. All right, I've been busy painting, and I've got most of the black done. This is what the vest looks like. I'm still going to be doing some gold around here and on the front here, but it's still blue. We've got some other paint colors to paint, and I still have to do the heads, and I've already explained to you what I was going to do. I do need to take this head and shape this. But before we shape that head, let's pick some more colors that we need. Now, this guy here has some red, and he also has sunglasses we have to make. But I want to do all the painting and everything first. And I will say that I do have the other two on my shelf, and they look pretty amazing. I was afraid that maybe having them all on the same shelf would, they look like all the same figure because they're all gold. But I've decided not to display them that way because what I've noticed is when I put them in with my G.I. Joe figures, the gold pops on the shelf. It looks really good. So I'm going to be doing some grays here. I do have, there's a lot of detail on these G.I. Joe guys, and you can see that there's a knife on this. You can see that knife there. So I'm going to paint some of that. So for the green, I know that I was saying that I was going to just use enamel, but this acrylic is the color I need. I'm just going to lighten it up just a tiny little bit, but it's kind of an olive green. Yeah, I like that green. Here, let me show you what that looks like. It's hard to see without. See if I can get the light in here. So that's the green I have. I think I'm gonna stick with that green. I was gonna lighten it up, but I think after mixing it, it actually turned out to be the green that I want. So that's perfect. Less mixing, the better. Now for the green, I'm going to be doing the details in these boots. There's a little detail here, a little detail in the back. So I have been using this brown on the other figures, and I'm going to continue using this browns only on the gold figures because I don't want to put, actually I'm going to put some brown on the shock trooper here, and I'll finish that up. Then we'll do some red. Once this is dry, I'll clean all that up with a toothpick, and I'll show you how to do that. I've been using this toothpick to scrape any of the new paint that I put down on top of the metallic paint or the chrome paint, and it works really well because what it does, it allows you to get these really nice straight lines where you can't usually get. So if we look right here, I'll show you what I'm doing. We just take the toothpick and we run it along the top of where we want to scrape. There, and it scrapes it all off. Now I can come in and touch these little lines up later on, but that gives you an idea of how to get all the nice lines. And here's an example of that where I've taken the toothpick and gone along the lines. You can see how the lines are pretty perfect. So it's really easy to do. And here's the satin varnish I'll put over all of the acrylic. So with the skin color of this figure, I've taken the usual brown that I've been using for some of the accents of the sheaths and the holsters, and I added a little bit of black to give me a darker skin tone. That way we don't have the exact same brown on this figure, so this should look pretty good. After a couple hours of painting and waiting for the paint to dry, I also got some gold on that vest for Sergeant Brown, and I painted the elbows the silver and gold, just because when you articulate the arms, the paint doesn't get all into the joints. So we have to move the joints so that we can repaint the parts that didn't get painted. So that's been all done, and we've got all of our different colors. Now we have to address the two heads that we need to make. So let's do that. So another revision to this project. The cat figure has been quite difficult because I only have so many of these heads with the berets, and I don't want to cut this beret off, and I also don't want to use this head for cat. But this head here that I decided to use isn't possible to use because if you look at the size of this beret and then you look at his head, it's way too deep. This guy's head is really, really, really small. And I tried thinking about using Duke's head. I actually don't like this head sculpt. I never really have. He's got too much of a smiley face. And the cat is pretty serious looking with a mustache, and that's not going to work. And plus, this doesn't fit in the body. Now, I've come to the conclusion I'm not going to be using bodies that require heads like this. I just don't have a lot of heads like this, and I'm not going to use vintage heads as much as possible. So, after saying that, I do have a vintage Zartan head, which does fit into the body really good, and he's missing his part of his hood here. And I have two Zartan heads like this, but I only have one hood. And so I think I'm going to be using this head. I used the rest of his body for a custom like a decade ago, so it's okay I think for me to use this head. It's in pretty bad condition, and I think if we painted it, I think it will actually work pretty well. I just took this nail file and I went around the head because this thing has been dragged in the dirt and on the pavement probably a bunch of times. That's why I'm not using this head as is, because his nose is squished and everything like that. And plus the fact that the cat does have a mustache, and if you look at this Zartan figure, I'm not sure if they ever used this sculpt before on anything other than Zartan, but he does have a large upper lip, and I think we can make that look like a mustache just because of how thick his upper lip is. I think they did that to make him look mean or whatever, but I think we could probably paint this and make it look really good with a big thick mustache, just like on the cat. So that's my final conclusion for this figure, and we're going to do that right now. Alright, I'll take these two pieces and sand them flat. Because he had a hole here in the back of his head, I was thinking that I could cut this so that some of the hair from the other head, from this head here, would come down and meet that, and then he'd have some hair in the back instead of a bald head. But we could give him a bald head. Probably just, we could add some epoxy to this too, or something like that. Some kind of epoxy, and sculpt some hair just on the bottom. But yeah, this is kind of iffy. I'm not really sure if that's going to work, but we'll try it out and see. Alright, so after quite a bit of shaping and sanding and filing, I managed to get the two pieces flattened so that it sits on his head. Sits on his head pretty good. It's a little long in the back, but that's okay because I'm going to make some hair after I glue this on. I'm going to make some hair here. So let's get this glued on, and then I'm just going to use crazy glue to make the hair. After I glue this on, I'm just going to take some crazy glue and I'm going to go around different areas and fill some gaps, and hopefully it'll make some texture. And once it's dry, then I'll be able to paint it and it'll actually look like hair. So, that's on backwards. So let's try that out and see what happens. I'm putting a lot of glue on this because I want to fill any gaps that is between the head and the beret here. So see how it squeezes out. Now if there's too much squeeze out in certain spots, we can always take a Q-tip and I think that looks pretty good. I think that's going to make sense. I think that's going to make sense once that's dry. So here we go. Now it looks strange because of Zartan's face paint, but I think that's going to look good. Actually, I notice here that this gap here has filled in pretty good. So let's let that dry and we'll come back and work on the hair and paint it. All right, I think that will fill those gaps really nice. Now it doesn't look great right now because, well, there's no paint. But what happens to super glue when it's put on thick like this? That's not recommended when you're trying to glue something together. But when it's put on thick like this, when it dries, it shrinks and kind of shrivels. And it will create probably some texture for the hair. So I think that'll look really good. So we'll let that dry and then we'll come back and paint it later. Now let's make some sunglasses for the shock trooper. So I have this 0.5 millimeter styrene here. It's white. I have some black styrene too, but it's not thin enough, and I'm making sunglasses, so it has to be quite thin because I don't want it to be sticking out from his head too much. And I think it'll be a good thickness. So I've got these sunglasses on here. All I need to do now, I think, is if I cut this off here where it begins, I think our sunglasses will be finished. Now, these sunglasses are black on the original diecast figure. And I probably should have painted these before I put them on, but I think I can use a toothpick and paint those. So I'm going to do a little bit of sanding in a couple spots just to kind of round things up. And then we'll paint these. I think it's going to look pretty awesome. Okay, I'm at the shop today just because I have all my Dremel bits here. I've got a lot of different bits, and we're going to see if we can shape this head, the bottom of the head, the neck actually, that goes into the body. I'm just going to use this as my template. So let's see if we can do this. Well, holy crap, this place is a mess. Yes, I'm back home. I've got this head. I finished it finally, made that new piece. And hopefully it's going to fit in that body right there. So I'm going to take that apart and we'll check and see. If it does, that means I am done with this project. It's been a long one. As you can see, the video is quite long. So let's get this together and then I'm ready to wrap this up and get these on the shelf. I can't wait to see what they look like. Yep, it fits and he looks kick-ass. All right, let's get the screw in him. That's our first one we've got together. And I'm excited to get the other ones. You can see he's all articulated. He's got paint in his elbow joint. Really good paint. That. And he's got his details of the red. So as I was cleaning up, I forgot to mention, and I did show it at the video already, but I forgot to mention that the red that I used for the shock trooper here is the Tamiya red enamel paint X7. So I'm going to go ahead and finish buttoning the rest of these guys up. And I'm going to repaint the black on this, but I'm going to be using enamel. I'm not going to show the painting. I've had enough painting in this video, but I will reveal when I get all of these figures put back together. I reveal what they look like beside their die-cast version. So before I get these guys on the turntable, I'm just revealing for the first time these guys are all together, and I think they turned out fantastic. We've got the cat here. He has that Zartan face. It turned out really well, and I gave him a kind of a handlebar mustache. And it really makes a difference when you're painting eyes on these figures to outline the top of the eyeball with a black line. I tried doing that without that because I didn't want to ruin my paint job, because one slip and that's it. But it really made a big difference, because before that it just looked like he had big googly eyes. So that makes a huge difference. We've got the green and the gray here with the grenades. He's got the painted knife. He has the holster on his right leg. He's got another sheath here, it looks like, or some kind of pouch. I did some gold here. I kept the gold with the buckle and stuff like that. He's got some pouches here on the front. He does have two-tone boots. He's got the green with the black. And we'll get this guy on a turntable, and you can see him 360. He does look a lot like the original figure, and we'll compare that. Now, for weapons, he did come with a gun similar to this, and this is the gun that came with Firefly, but it's just a modern version in black instead of in green. So we're going to give him that. It fits in his hand really nice. After all, the chest that he has is from a Firefly mold, so that looks really good. So I have a M16. I believe these guns, they came with the Cobra officers. And this one is from a weapons pack from the 80s. And it's in white. I'm not going to paint this black because I actually like the white. And because it's an original 80s gun, I don't want to paint it. If it was like a modern version of it, I would paint it. So it will go with his white glasses too. I gave him the white rimmed glasses. So we got the M16. He has the walkie-talkie or the phone. So that looks really good. And then here we've got the red. I've already kind of shown this a few minutes ago, but we've got the knife here on the left leg. We've got the gun holster on the right leg. We've got the red details here. We've got the black pouch here. We've got the black here. And he's got some gray details here. And of course, we've got that fantastic pair of sunglasses with his hat, which I made. So that was really cool. If we look at the die-cast figure here of the shock trooper, you can see that he does compare very well. So we'll get him on the turntable here in a second, but we have one more figure to take a look at. And I really like how this guy turned out. Now, I've been calling him, now I'll probably edit this out of the video, but I've been calling him the communications expert, but he's actually not a communications expert. He is actually a demolitions expert. And you can see he's got the vest. He has the knife. And now this guy doesn't have a knife there, but he has a knife also on his leg, and he's got a holster on his right leg too with a handgun in there. And I think he looks really good. I like the skin tone that I got. It's a little darker than the die-cast figure, but that's okay. I think I like that color of his skin tone anyway. Now, this guy is supposed to have a grenade launcher from the die-cast figure, and I don't have a grenade launcher that I can give this guy in the scale that I need. So I'm going to give him Firefly's backpack, which has the removable panel here. That's going to look really good. He does have the straps there in the back, so we'll give him the backpack. And if I ever find a grenade launcher, then I'll add it to him. Of course, I want him to have a grenade launcher. And then that's pretty much it. That's what I've got. Let's get them on the turntable, and we'll take a look again. And before we get the turntable going, I just wanted to show that this head does articulate. Even though I did modify it to fit in that space, it does articulate. So I'm super happy with that. So thanks for watching this episode of Toysbackzen. This project is getting more and more interesting for me. I'm having a really fun time doing it, making sunglasses, switching helmets, hats, berets around, coming up with ways of finding their accessories or their weaponry. In my junk bins here of core figures and G.I. Joe figures, and making these figures O-ring 3 3/4 like I always thought they should have been. So thanks for watching this episode of Toysbackzen. Please like and subscribe if you like what you see here, and hit the notification bell so you can get notifications for my other series of videos. I've made 5 of the 18 figures, and we've got quite a few figures to go. We've got 13 more figures to make. So stay tuned for those, and we'll see you in the next one.